Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Carm Capriato, Remarkable Results Radio, Town Hall Academy. Let me see, week 304. I can't imagine. Who would have thought 304 weeks ago? And welcome back to another great episode, the Single Subject podcast. And we always tear a great subject apart. And someone asked me the other day, they says, how do you keep coming up with these topics? And I says, all I have to do is talk to my friends Matt and Hunt, and they just inspire me, and it just happens. So good to have him here. Matt Fanslow, lead diagnostician, Riverside Automotive in Red Wing, Minnesota, and from the Aftermarket Radio Network, the Matt Fanslow Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z podcast. Hey, Matt.
Hello, sir.
And Hunt Demarest is here, CPA par Mellis, specializing in automotive shops. And of course, from the Hunt Demarest Business by the Numbers podcast on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Hey, Hunt.
Hey, Carm.
Thank you for taking time away from your family, both of your families, to be here. We're recording.
They were oddly happy to part with me.
Yeah, we're recording this at night. It's amazing what we do as podcasters. In order, Hunt, I know that you're recording. You got a young family. You got a heck of a business going. I don't know how you guys find the time, but thank you, because you guys contribute some incredible stuff to the industry. Want to stop for a moment, give high five to our great sponsors. Okay, you quoted a job last month and the customer just said yes, but the price for parts went up a notch. When you use Shopware's native parts catalog, you simply update pricing with one click. Talk to my friends at getshopware.com. And with over 2,300 SKUs and 95% sales coverage on fuel pumps, Delphi has everything you need to replace your customer's fuel pump, from OEM quality pumps, modules, GDI pumps, and fuel tank cleaning supplies in their brand new tool to instructional videos. Get started at DelphiAftermarket.com. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and thanks. Okay, our job is to advance the aftermarket and find great aftermarket insights. And so it was, God, man, I don't remember. It may have been a month ago. You picked up the phone and said, something weird just happened. And he chatted with me about it. And I says, there's only one person to talk to. Only one person. And I gave him some advice, but I said, look, I think we got to bring Hunt into this discussion. And that's why we're calling this Seller Beware. That's the name of our podcast title today. And I think you're going to really appreciate this story and dialogue. Matt, I'll let you start.
Well, it's just a story of a boy in a small town. Really. So over the last, I would say, year, my employer and I have been discussing the idea of me kind of buying in and then buying him out. And it was really, I don't know how the frequency of discussion wasn't so much, but fundamentally, he was saying like the sooner he could get out, it would probably be the better for me, which I agreed with. And, stuff is just kind of going on. We're still getting together after the fire, stuff like that. And it's a random day. This is maybe 2-3 months ago. A guy stops in with a briefcase and he catches my boss's ear, and they're sitting out in the lobby talking and talking and talking. It turns out this guy's a salesman. And what he's selling is consultation. The company he works for is not automotive based, or, they don't really focus just on automotive repair shops, but they're a consultation company. And my boss kind of lets him know that he's looking to retire. He wants to build a brand new house and he wants to sell the shop to me. And the guy's like, well, I can send you one of my consultants to go through and check everything, and he'll give it to you straight. What do you need to do? And then he'll give you some ideas with bringing in our crew. So we're going to send a crew in, and they're going to just get right down to the nitty gritty and figure out what it takes to accomplish your goals. And it's not like again, it's not automotive related. And so my boss is like, yeah, okay, send your guy. And, because it seems like he's genuine with what he wants to do. And the consultant shows up a few weeks later. Younger guy, I would say, I don't know, late 20s. From he's got
really
a
experienced.
he's got a Yale degree, and
Oh,
he's all dressed up in blue and everything. And he's he's friendly, and he starts digging through papers and asking for receipts, access to this, access to that, and really honestly, he starts kind of begging on our accountant, not face to face, but to my boss, like, your accountant's really letting you down. Your accountant's letting you down. And to be completely honest and open, Hunt is not our accountant. So he's
That's
not
the twist
here.
of this episode.
He's not here to defend himself.
Let me stop for a moment. Hunt, have you ever heard of this going on? We're door to door trying to hook someone.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Different, and we'll get into it, but yeah, different situations. But this is not super common, but it is not unheard of by any means.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm kind of wondering what's going on a little bit. And I get pulled into a meeting with my boss and this consultant. And, I got to level with you. My BS meter was pegged with the consultant, but I had good feelings that what my boss is telling me is true. That, like, he legitimately wants to get out as soon as possible for my benefit. And he legitimately wants to sell me the business or, however, transfer it and give me the best chance to succeed. And the consultant's telling me, like, your boss is willing to do a lot to make this happen. He really just wants to be okay in retirement, and he wants to be able to build this house. That's like the two big goals. And of course, sell the business and give you, not really just bury you in overhead. Like, he really cares that you can make this thing fly, and he wants to do whatever he can to make that happen. So that was like really nice to find out that, he can tell me what he wants all day, and I'm not trying to like make him out to be a liar or sinister in any fashion. Just, it's one thing to hear it from somebody. It's another thing when they're telling others, right? It just really hammers home that, believability or whatever. And so that whatever, they're figuring out what needs to happen. It turns out he needs way more money to retire. And that, I don't want to make it sound like his fault. Like, you're a mess up. You don't have enough money to retire. I think there's a lot of things going on contributing to that. And at his age, he's going to need a lot of money to retire. That's just the reality. But then comes the part where I think things go really shady. And of course, he's attacking the accountant and what they're doing and what they're not doing, and all this information that they should be providing my boss and have these numbers readily available. Shouldn't be calling them and it's like, okay, give me a couple hours, I'll email them to you. They should know it. They should be able to look it up. Boom. I really hate this accountant. That's the first thing we're going to do. You're going to fire that accountant, and we're going to, get you set up with one of our certified.
Again, not me.
Again, this sounds like a networking thing here.
I go, yeah, are you talking like Hunt? And he's like, who?
He was playing it coy. He knew exactly who you were talking about. Yeah.
Okay, but here was the thing: is in this another meeting, he has us sitting there, and he's like, "Have you guys discussed?" Actually, I want to skip this. I want to jump back a little bit. He had us write down our 5 goals, just 5 goals. It was pretty cool to me that of the 5 goals, 3 of ours line up. So that was pretty cool. And concerning taking over the business, selling the business, stuff like that. Now came this follow-up meeting, and he's like, have you guys started talking about numbers? And I don't know if it's important to throw out the actual number here, but we'll just
Doesn't
say
matter.
we agreed kind of on a ballpark number that we
Okay.
both felt was fair for the land, the building, everything under the roof, the name, just everything. Here it is, all of it. And he's like, "Are you kidding? That this place is worth way more than that. What if you'll take that much for it? I'm going to go out to my car. I'll write you a check for that right now." And we're talking again. I don't know how important it is, but we're talking like 7 figures, and all right, 7-figure something. So I will go write a check out for this place right now. It's worth so much more than that. And my boss is kind of like, "Well, yeah, but I think this is fair and whatever." And he's like, "Well, tell me this then. When the IRS finds out that you've sold this business to him, which is worth 3 times what you're going to sell it to him for, they're going to basically say you gifted him this amount of money, and they're going to want their tax money on that. He's not going to be on the hook for it. You are." And I think my boss's heart stopped. His heart stopped. You could just see the panic set in. And again, I'm not taking a dig at him. I don't want this to be misconstrued in any fashion that he's should have known better. This is legitimate. You don't know what you don't know, and his heart stopped. The panic set in. He turned ghost white. Like, this is a legitimate problem. What am I going
Hunt,
to do?
Hunt, when I heard that gift thing, that's when I evoked your name to Matt. I said, because I know enough about deals and stuff like the gifting thing to say that something was wrong.
Exactly.
And Matt, you wouldn't have. Did you think or know, or were you just kind of just going along?
I was going along, but and I'm not trying to prop myself up either. I'm not trying to put myself over in any way. It's just early on, my BS meter's pegged.
Yeah.
I just
And it didn't go down.
I'm just not trusting this guy. I'm not trusting what I'm hearing. Some of the other stuff in these meetings that he's suggesting we do, like we got to quit, like increase our inventory 10-fold. Now I know you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Right away.
It's just like
right away.
Sorry, your background. I learned from Hunt what their background is later on, but I talked to you about it. Just kind of like what we're talking about with I'm feeling kind of good that my boss is willing to go to these lengths to set me up to succeed. And I don't blame him for wanting to have his, best interest in mind with retirement. And the house, I know what you've lived in for 30 plus years. Wanting a new house is, I don't think, an absurd obsession. So I'm sympathetic to that and would like to see that happen, of course. Then I'm talking to you about it and I cite this hurdle and you're kind of like, you should call Hunt. And so
call a friend.
Phone a friend. So we're in another meeting and the guy's now pressing. This is what it will take. I'm going to have a crew of, I think it was something crazy, like 4 or 5 people show up. You know what I mean? It's just going to be almost like the IRS is showing up. And
we're going to take inventory and show you where you're lacking.
And they get paid $300, $400, $500 an hour, and it's going to be 4 of them, $2,000 an hour. But we'll be here for about a week, and boom, we're going to get this place set up, and you're going to achieve your goal in 3 years. And Matt's going to take over, and he's already going to have a whole bunch of equity. Blah blah blah. Just the sales pitch, and all it's going to cost you is whatever this. I think it was something to the tune of $40,000. It might have been. I think it was something like that. I don't think it was 50. I think it was 40 some blah, blah, blah number. And my boss is ready to write the check. Okay. And that's, again, this is not a dig at him. I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm saying.
But how many meetings did he feel like he was ready to write the check? Was it 4 or 5?
I would say by the third one.
Third one? Okay.
I think by the third one, he was like, this is what I need to do to achieve my goal and dreams.
Okay. Wow. It sure sounds like the whole goal and dreams thing really, and no disrespect to him, but that probably kept, his antenna up.
Absolutely. And so I think he's ready to write the check. Like I think the checkbook is out, the pen's in hand, and he one more time, I'm working on cars, so he stops by the car I'm working on, and he's kind of like, what do you think? I'm thinking I got to do this. I'm thinking like for this to happen to you, for me to be able to achieve retirement and build the house and stuff like that, that this might be money well spent. And I'm like, I got to make a call. So I text message Hunt, like, may I please call you? May I buy some of your time? It shouldn't take long, not because I'm trying to be cheap, but because I don't think it's going to require a big, long conversation. And Hunt, being Hunt, told me to F off. I'm just kidding.
That's why he's on the team.
And that's the end of the episode. We'll
That's
never
the end
know.
of the episode,
Hunt refuses to give us advice, right?
So, please call my office, and I put him on speakerphone and I fill him in a little bit. My boss is on there with him, and I guess maybe I'll turn it over to Hunt now because his advice steered us in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, when I heard some of it, right, I heard bits and pieces. I think that you messaged me before we even talked, or maybe even talked to Carm, and you're the same, shoes as I was of like, what's going on here? And then when you started telling me more, I kind of figured out who it was. And I think pretty much guessed some of the other things that they were doing other than the valuation side of it, right?
Yep.
But, and to your boss's credit here, this is not something where he's well versed in, right? He has never sold a business in his life. And these people are generally very good salesmen. And just like you said, they are very high pressure on it. And they start throwing out, terms that people haven't heard of. They start throwing out stuff like the gift tax, right? Because they know what people are nervous about, right? People are nervous. Hey, am I going to be able to get this sale through? Right? Perfect. We check that box. People are afraid that they're not getting enough money for what they've created their whole life. Check box, right? Because think about if you're trying to go to a seller. Everyone, when I do valuations, and I only do valuations for shop, some people are more honest than others. But generally, you can tell the number that comes in is probably not that magic number in the back of their head. Even if they get that number and they say, hey, I know this is right, I'm not arguing about it. But they're like, that's not that much money when you factor in, I've been doing this for 43 years. I'm taking 8 vacations, right? And so they're, kind of preying on people's own insecurities or people's own question marks there. And then they start throwing in other stuff, right? Like you said, of, hey, we have to throw the accountant under the bus because we want people to think that they're completely missing the boat and we're going to be able to come in here, right? And it's no different than really any business owners I talk to, right? If I had $1 for every single time someone asked me, well, Hunt, what are the rich people doing to avoid being able to pay all taxes, right? And, some of my clients where I'll classify them as rich, and especially been working with them for a couple of years, I'll usually joke to them and be like, hey, is it true what they say that the rich people don't pay their fair share of taxes? And they kind of laugh about that, right? Because tax rates max out at 40%, almost 50%. It is very, very expensive to make a lot of money. Champagne problem to have. But the reason why I bring that one up is because people hear that around, right? People think, oh, there's these loopholes. There's these things that people do. And I'll be honest, there are things that you can do to minimize this in legitimate fashions. And there's also things that do apply to people that are making $40 million a year, right? There's a sweet spot of making a ton of money, but not an absolute ton of money where you have all these things at your resources. But, there's a perception that, hey, there is kind of this secret code out here and there's the secret way to do things. Now, what people find out is, hey, there is different things that you can do. Hey, there's different strategies. But all these strategies come with a cost, right? And just like Matt was saying, let's say that this strategy was going to save them some sort of money in some way, shape, or form. Was it ever going to surpass the $40,000 that they're paying the people? Probably not, right? And I can't remember Matt's specific situation, but a lot of these ones, what a lot of people don't think about is, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to set up this entity. We're going to split these assets out. We're going to rent this back to ourselves. And they set up this extremely convoluted chain of businesses and entities, which is great, right? You're trying to avoid this, you're trying to do this. And in a perfect world, in the ideal scenario, you can see some benefit there. Now, what they fail to mention, and unfortunately, if I'm involved in the conversation, hopefully before this goes down, I can tell this side of it. But a lot of times what these people don't realize is kind of the residual cost. Well, hey, that's great. You set up all these entities so that you could minimize your taxes by $3,000. What they did not tell you is now you have to file 6 tax returns versus 2. So now you're going to be paying me thousands of dollars extra to prepare these returns. So what value are you getting out of this? And the big thing that, really kind of bugged me about this is maybe it's personal preference on how I do valuations and how I approach these deals. Really, I guess 2 things. First things is I hate valuations from people outside of this industry, right? This is not self-servant. This is not Hunt's the only one that can do valuations on it. Unless you know the business, and any good person that does valuations will say, I won't do a valuation unless I understand that industry. It's impossible, right? I don't care what books you read. I don't care what you look up on the internet. Unless you actually know how things are sold in that specific industry, you shouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, right? I'm accredited in business valuation, as that nice little graphic over there shows. And I've been approached to do valuations for other kinds of businesses other than shops, and I won't do it because I just don't know what is customary, right? And if you don't know what's customary, you don't know what other people are doing, you might be high, you might be super low on it. And another thing is when I get involved in valuations, especially where a succession plan like this, and it is extremely common in my line of work and this industry to be selling to a key member, to a family member, to a longtime employee, whatever it might be. And if I get approached and someone says, hey, we have a price, we've both agreed to it. The first question I always ask them is, hey, do you want an opinion on that price? Are you guys both good to go with it? If they say, no, we're okay with it, and it's within reason, then we're going to move on to the next step, right? Hey, how can I come in here in an outsider's point of view and give my opinion on something that they aren't necessarily asking for, right? Because again, if Matt has agreed to a price with his boss for $1 million, and I come in and say, well, I think it's worth $1.2 million, we're not really speaking any sort of different languages here, right? Valuation is not an exact science by any means. And really, a lot of times what you're doing is you're driving a wrench between people. Now, there are situations where I do have to get involved, right? Where I have to say, you know what? You guys can still do what you want to do here, but this is extremely high, right? Generally, if it's lower, I might not say anything, or I just say, hey, you know what? That seems like a pretty good deal for Matt. And if they say, yeah, it does, but he's, given me lots of great years of service and I appreciate everything that he's done, perfect. It makes sense, right? We're not giving this thing away. At the end of the day, we want something that's a win-win for both parties. Now, where that goes from there is really like, hey, you know what? If you guys want to negotiate, if you guys want to bring it down, great. But at that point, my job is to set up something that works for both people, right? Hey, you guys have agreed upon this. How do we make this where it's a win-win for both parties, right? Not super lopsided where it just, rewards the seller and then the buyer is getting screwed on this, and not vice versa, right? I always like to work with both parties on this to say, all right, we can set up a situation, and most people want a situation where both of you can succeed. And it's unfortunate because we do see this, and I see this from outsiders, right? Whether it's a consulting firm, whether you're talking to friends, whether you're talking to fellow shop owners on it, I see a lot of people getting some really, really bad advice in these situations, and sometimes completely blowing up deals, right? I've seen people in Matt's situation, and I'm not jinxing you at all, Matt, here, right? Where they have a very good handshake deal, right? Even for years, like, hey, we know either what that number is or what the method is going to be, and we are both good with it, and we're coming to the finish line. And I've seen it time and time again at the 11th hour. All of a sudden, it's like, you know what? I can't give this away for $1 million. It's going to be 1.6 million. Whoa, where did that number come from? Well, I was talking to my friend, and he says you never sell for less than one-time multiple of sales. And these people get this in their head, and now it just completely throws a wrench into these deals. And so you just have to be super careful who you're talking to and what advice you're even trying to solicit here, right? And this stuff is deeper than just the numbers. A lot of times there's relationships, there's sweat equity on this. And there's just no way that someone, especially an Ivy League kid with a briefcase, is going to be able to come off the street and be able to, unpack everything that you've done in that business or haven't done in that business and be able to throw out any sort of numbers let alone try and charge you $40,000 for this stuff.
Got it. Hey guys, thank you so much for where we are right now. I want to stop for one more minute and give a high five to our great sponsors. Each shop has its own customer records. So when multi-shop owners use Shopware, they are always in the system. Blow customers away by pulling up their records in a flash. On the web, talk to my friends at getshopware.com. And trust in the aftermarket supplier that makes the parts that cars are born with. With over 100 years of OE heritage, Delphi Technologies quality parts gives you peace of mind. Learn more at delphiaftermarket.com. So by the time this episode hits the airwaves, Hunt will have had an episode out called Bank Loans 101. By the way, excellent episode. There's a little discussion on, how to deal with a bank in a deal like Matt would be looking forward to have. But also back in episode 14, I don't know, when was that? That was sometime in May, selling your shop to a key employee, Hunt. You've covered so much of this kind of talk on your podcast, and we sure do appreciate it. Matt, so you texted Matt, you obviously called a friend, and you got on with your boss, and then Hunt kind of filled us in. Where do we stand right now? Where are we?
I think we're still in the process. He's still, I think he stepped up how much his accountant is doing. So I'm meaning he's paying them more. So I think for quite a while he's kind of more on the skeletal side of things. So he's stepped up that. And then there's a few other things left at the fire that I think we got to address first before we can really start moving along. But I think the next big thing for me is to sit down, try to buy more of a Hunt's time, or whatever that involves, retaining, and really set up. And I'm not even saying like so much set in stone or get it down on paper, but I think he may need some education on how many different ways there are to make this happen that could really benefit both of us. Like it's rare you can say that two people can have their cake and eat it too, but we could maybe get really close to that and give him the comfort he wants for retirement while not saddling me under an absurd amount of overhead.
Hunt, there is no doubt in your episode, Bank Loans 101, at the end of it, as you were talking about this exact situation, it sounded like you were talking about Matt. Because, here's the guy, key player, doesn't have the kind of money that I need. Well, let's work this thing out with the bank. And he got what he want. Matt got what when I heard that, I said, man, it just sounds, I can't wait to kind of do this episode to see if there's any connection there.
Yeah, because all the things that I talk about in the episodes, just like you said before, where do you get these ideas? This is what people are asking. There is so many people in Matt's shoes right now, right? I'm probably have 2 or 3 deals I'm already working on in a very similar situation of this, and that's what we're always trying to do, is trying to say, all right, first and foremost, we got to kind of get your, not to steal these guys' ideas. What are your goals? And really specifically on that, all I care about is, hey, what is your timeline here? What is your timeline? Do you want to get paid for this? Over what length of time on it? Do you want to hold the note? Do you not want to hold the note? And essentially you go down and give them a little bit of interview and say, all right, if I know kind of your timeline on here, I know ultimately what you guys want to get out of this. Obviously, if you don't have a price, we can come up with a price on it. Now that we have a timeline, now we have a price on this. This is super straightforward, right? And just like so many things I talk about is people try and make things way more complicated than they need to be, right? This is not a hostile takeover. This is not a large corporation merger. These are two people that want to transfer ownership from one to the other, right? How do we do this in an organized fashion that leaves the lawyers out of it, more or less leaves the accountants out of this, right? It is just not that complicated. And sometimes when I see this, I see consultants get involved, right? I see lawyers get involved. I see people paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to come up with these agreements. That's like, why? Why are you doing this? You've known this person for 20 years on it, right? Are you really going to sue them and keep them binded on this contract if they want to walk away from it? Well, of course not. Well, then why are you getting the lawyers involved in this, right? Don't overthink this, try and come up with a logical situation. And then the biggest thing is to make sure that you are all on the same page. And that's really the biggest thing that I see a lot from my side of it, right? And that's why I love talking to Matt, because he's coming from the opposite side of the table, right? He's the one buying my client's business. And a lot of times I'm only talking to my client. But the first thing I always tell to him is, hey, you have a lot of these ideas, right? If I'm talking to Matt's boss, you have a lot of these ideas and you have probably a pretty good timeline in your head. Have you ever shared that with Matt? Well, kind of, we've mentioned it. I say, no, you guys have to be on the same page here. Well, I kind of know I want to be out by this date. All right, Matt should know that as well too, right? A lot of times people, when they're selling a business, think, well, this is just a really big decision for me, which is really not fair to the other side of it, right? This is going to be, when Matt ultimately buys this or takes this over, this is going to be the most money he's ever spent in his life. It might be one of his largest purchases he's ever made. Do you think that he wants to get that a month before it's supposed to all go down? No, right? He's got to get his finances in order. He's got to get his life in order. He's got to kind of get his, everything prepared to take this over. And it's not fair to just settle that on someone in the last minute. Matt, are you ready to do it tomorrow?
Spiritually, yeah.
Spiritually. By the way, we have to give a shout out to Matt. Now, people that are listening and don't have the video, you're really doing yourself a disservice. I think this is the first time, we'll call this podcast, first time in podcast history where we have a rocking chair where that mic does not get any farther away from you. So, look at that. Look at that.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I am jealous. I am so jealous. That microphone is hooked to the rocking chair. And Matt, had I known you've been doing all your podcasts from the easy chair, I would have adopted that.
I just figured everyone would assume it's Matt. He's arguably the laziest person they know. That it couldn't be any other way, short of it just lays on the floor.
So much has gone down. You guys got, if you will, mesmerized by the Fuller Brush man. And maybe I'm showing my age, but that was a door-to-door guy that came around and sold you combs years ago, right?
Wow.
Or the Electrolux salesman who came in and threw the dust in there and says, got to take out the vacuum, show you how it works, right?
Yep.
So it's this door-to-door M&A, mergers and acquisitions team. And so he upgraded his accounting, or at least he stopped paying for bookkeeping services and probably is now paying for accounting services, right?
Yep.
And is the timeline have been discussed? What are he talking about?
Yeah, I think the timeline had to be moved later, because legitimately he's going to have to pocket some more money. But again, it's one of those things where after we get some of the things with the fire settled and handled, post-fire insurance stuff, that I would really like to get Hunt involved. And it's not just putting over Hunt, but we have trust. Clearly he knows what he's talking about. He's demonstrated his knowledge to my boss. It's somebody we can both agree on, and he has experience in the profession itself. It just seems like a no-brainer. And I think that would be a big move, important move. Not a big move. I think it's a very important move to get him involved sooner rather than later, to start laying the groundwork. And if my boss really doesn't have an idea of timeline, because I think he's caught a little bit where he's maybe younger than most people are when they sell, and he's not necessarily ready to be out. Like, not sure what he's going to do at this time. I have an idea he'll figure out quite quickly what to do with his time. But picturing that is difficult, so there's hesitancy with that. But once I think he gets a lot of his, or, really he has two big concerns. Those are addressed. The timeline's probably fairly flexible. You know what I mean? Like, it could be sooner rather than later.
Hunt, you brought up.
No,
go ahead, man.
Well, I was just going to say, if the retirement thing is handled and he has enough money to go after the building of the house, then he might be open to tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's not the time, it's the money, really, right? It's at the end of the day, it goes hand in hand.
One of the things you brought up in that Bank Loans 101 is a banker's relationship.
Yeah.
And so, Matt, does your owner have a really good bankers or banking relationship with someone in the bank?
I would say no, because I don't think he's ever borrowed money for anything.
That's
See,
a good thing, though.
Yeah, I don't.
yeah, that is a good thing, Hunt. But I left that episode on the Bank Loans 101 with the ability for, in fact, that could be a strategy, Hunt, that the owner works on and slowly introduces Matt into the banker's relationship with him and says, he's the guy.
Yeah.
And and we need to talk about this. You need to see my financials. What kind of money can we get? I mean, Hunt, you covered SBA. You covered a lot of really cool stuff in that episode, which it's so apropos to be doing this now, Maddie. I know you haven't heard the episode, but when you listen to it, you're going to say, you're going to learn a lot from it, or you're going to say, been there, done that. But Hunt, it was just a great episode. So banker relationship, I would say, Hunt, would be a big one for them right now.
Yeah, and a big thing, and one of the things I was talking about on that one as it relates to this is a lot of people's, again, this is concern, right? And I hear this a lot of, well, is the bank going to be okay with this valuation of it, right? Is the bank going to say that's too high or too low or something like that? And a couple of things, right? To go back to one of the things that you said before of, well, hey, if you sell it too cheap, it's going to be a gift. That's never going to happen, right? You're unrelated parties. You've set the market on this. Now, is there a case where it could happen? Sure. If you got $1 million building and you sell it to Matt for $25,000, if someone was to ever look into that, they might say, what happened here? But it's just a situation that's so extreme that never happens. But as we're talking about banks very rarely ever have an opinion on the actual value of the business. If you do SBA, they'll sometimes make you do a valuation, which they get a third party to do it. Again, the third parties that do this, they only do SBA valuations. They're not worth the paper that they're written on. And they're generally a lot like building appraisals. Magically, they come in very close to the number that you're trying to buy this for. But, like you were talking about, Karma, why a banker relationship is so important. For this deal, if it's pretty straightforward on it, you might not need a creative banker to get this deal done if it's a pretty amicable situation on it. But, right, Matt's boss never had to borrow any money, which is really awesome, right? I've seen the exact opposite where people have strapped themselves with cash from day one and have just been constantly fighting back to pay this back. But again, this is going to be Matt starting his business career. Right. And it's always so important to make sure that you have a banker that understands your business and you have a relationship with, because maybe Matt's, business career is going to be very similar to his boss. He's going to get this loan paid off and he's going to be debt free and he's never going to have debt again. But realistically, a lot of people need debt, whether it's a small something for a piece of equipment or larger expansion or, going multi-location. And to have a banker in your corner that understands your business, that trusts you, that you have a good rapport with, that you can sound stuff off, that you can get advice from is huge, right? And so don't just go out and say, well, hey, who's going to be the first one to give me money? This is the first person I passed. Again, hey, does this person sound like a salesman? Does this person sound like someone that I can trust or someone that's just going to try and give me the answers that I want to hear so they can get this loan?
Man, I gotta stop for just like a minute and a half and tell you a great story about a banker's relationship. When I wanted to buy my first ever home, I owned a duplex, by the way, and I wanted to continue to own the duplex and buy the house. So our business banker was different than my personal bank, and don't ask me how or why that happened. I went to my own personal bank, and they said, "Oh, you're going to move out of the duplex? We can't use the income from the other side." And this is a bunch of years ago. And I was really upset. And I said, Mom, I'm about ready to do this. I went back to the business banker that we had a tremendous relationship with. And I said to him, is this true? And he goes, yeah, our bank does that too. But Carm, give me your paperwork. And he made it happen.
Yeah. I mean, and I've seen this case so many times, and I tell people this is if you don't have anything beyond, if you just give them the financials and say, hey, can I do this loan or not do this loan? And you have a bad banker, they're going to look at that and they're going to say yes or no, right? If the answer is no, you move on and you go away. A good banker is just like Carm said, is going to say, all right, we got a tricky one here. And I got one banker that I work with a lot, that I trust a lot. He's a CPA, so he really understands the numbers. And every once in a while he laughs. He goes, yeah, we got a deal here, but we're going to have some work on this, right? Because within reason, there can be stuff done, but there needs to be, and this is nothing illegal by any means, right? But this is structuring this, right? Hey, I can do this deal and this is going to work for Matt and his boss, but we're probably not going to be able to do the entire amount. With Matt's boss, will he be willing to hold 10%? I don't know. We got to talk to him. Well, hey, maybe if he's not willing to do this, maybe we can kind of raise the rent, right? Maybe he can hold the real estate for a little bit. We'll split up in these pieces and brainstorm these ideas. Again, just like we're talking about with succession plan. All right, first and foremost, you guys want to get money, right? You guys want to sell this. Hey, if we can all do all this now, great, right? But maybe we need to kind of take this piece by piece. And if you don't have someone that's willing to do that extra work, and also even furthermore is, hey, you could be talking to that banker and you could be in agreement with the deal. That banker's not the one that's actually going to approve that loan whatsoever, right? Depending on how big of a bank, they have some power, but most of them don't have a whole lot. At some point, they're going to have to take this in front of committee. They're going to have to take this in front of the underwriters. And that banker is your advocate. That is the one that's fighting for this. So when it goes to committee and they say, oh, we don't like this deal, it's not showing a strong history of profitability, that banker is going to want to be able to say, hey, those numbers don't paint a full picture, right? Hey, he's a small business owner. There's some expenses that run down through there that probably don't need to be there. Hey, take a look at how much he's making on payroll. That's not actually accurate. So if you really look at these numbers, this is what the business is doing, right? These are the conversations you have with the banker. Now the banker is arguing for you and petitioning for your case with committee.
A great point, Hunt. Thank you so much. We're going to come back and do our final segment, but high five to Shopware again. Does anyone really enjoy playing phone tag? Well, the callback will come back at exactly the worst time for you. Instead, share repair orders in any level of detail via Shopware's exclusive messenger platform with a live chat. Talk to my friends at Shopware. GetShopware.com. And are you up to date on your training? Delphi Technologies is proud to offer over 30 courses run by ASE certified technicians for professionals. Turn to the OE aftermarket supplier with over 100 years of experience. Inquire today, DelphiAftermarket.com. Hey, great stuff, guys. The title of this episode was Seller Beware. Matt, thank you so much for sharing this with me and involving Hunt. We felt together that we needed to share this with the industry because I think there's an awful lot of learning there for the door-to-door M&A people that you really need to be aware of. And there's no doubt the graying of our industry. Everybody wants to get out. There's so much succession plans, so many number twos that are worthy of buying the business, and there are deals to be made. Hunt, I know you've done so many great episodes on it. Let's just figure, is there anything we didn't say that was in our talking points? Hunt, I'll start with you, and Matt, you can bat cleanup. Anything, Hunt? Anything else?
You got to put me on the spot here of something that we haven't talked about before, right?
Well, then you say, hey, I said my piece. I've sent you.
I think the biggest thing here is, right, we're in the information age, right? There is so much information out there at our fingertips on it, but there's such thing as too much information because a lot of this is not black and white, right? And none of it is, hey, this is the right way to do this. This is the wrong way to do this. A lot of this is opinion, right? And so if you have someone's opinion, you have to then weight their merits of these opinions. Hey, is this coming from a place of knowledge or is this coming from a place of hubris where they're really overstepping this? And that would say is the biggest thing is if you're a buyer or if you're a seller of the business. I guess we're going to do seller because this is only seller where beware, right? But be mindful of the opinions that you're getting and be mindful of who you're sharing this stuff with because a lot of times you get too much information and just like this, it starts to really change the course of everything and not in a good way at all.
It starts to sound too good. and then Matt's BS meter came up and pretty smart, Matt. I'll give you the last word, Matt. Thank you so much for sharing this because you do share more than anyone that I know in the industry and all those great episodes that you've had, personal triumphs and stuff, challenges and triumphs. And I think this was just a brilliant topic. Thank you for bringing it.
Well, yeah, thanks for listening the first time and imparting advice and reminding me to have the ability to reach out to people like Hunt and Hunt specifically. And then thanks to Hunt for, taking the call and talking to us a little bit and pointing us in a very good direction. I think, I have a couple of thoughts. One is just kind of the predatory nature of these companies to kind of be aware of, and they're using your desire against you. So you have to kind of reverse your way of thinking a little bit. If there's something you really, really want, somebody wants a new car really bad, gotta have this new car, this new whatever it is. It's probably going to be limited edition. I can't really afford it, but I really want it, and so I'm going to figure out how to get it. Well, they're using that against you a little bit. They're coming in and they're capitalizing a little bit on some fears and capitalizing on where you may not have some knowledge or certainly not comfortable with your level of knowledge. And they're using that against you. I'm glad Hunt brought it back up. Like it was a severe fear tactic used in the difference in valuations. This is the number we agreed on, but this is what I think it's worth. This valuation can come out much, much higher. You could be on the hook. You could be on the hook for paying a gift tax on $1 million. Do you have that kind of money? The
first thing I said to Matt when he told me that, I didn't know you guys were related. and Matt says, no, I'm not. And I go, well, that's just some crap.
This is the best. This is so good. So Hunt is on the speakerphone and we're telling him this. So my boss is like thinking he's laying this trap for Hunt. Like, well, oh yeah, well, who's going to be on the hook for the gift tax when it comes for the IRS sees that I sold it to them for a third of what it's worth? And Hunt's like, did they really say that? Just seriously, he was like, did they really say that? And it just deflated everything. It was so good. It was so good.
My takeaway from this is an accountant relationship. We talk about bankers' relationship, Hunt, but it's almost like if the accountant's relationship is what it is, when the person walked in and started to, shape their probably would have said to them, we're already on this.
Yeah, but the thing about it is a lot of these people, right? And this is a specific succession planning, but we've had other people that have similar consultants, right? And Matt says they're preying on your fears, they're preying on your weaknesses. And they know that their biggest opponent in some of these ideas is going to be your accountant, right? Because a lot of people then go back and say, well, I'm going to ask my accountant that. But what these people, this is sales 101, right? Figure out what their needs are, figure out what their desires are, and then give them something that's going to meet it, right? And they're going to say yes to it. But they already know that they're going to have pushback when they go to the accountants. So what better way to already torpedo that than to say how bad they are? Well, of course, they're not going to like this because they're not good enough or they're not smart enough to understand what we're doing here. So when they tell you that this is all BS, put no stock into that because they don't know what we're talking about. We're much smarter than they are. Seen it all the time. Because I've even had clients where I've said, oh, I don't really like that idea. And they said, they told us that you were going to say that. I was like, of course they did.
Well, I'll tell you, Matt, a great lesson here. Of course, Hunt and I wish you all kinds of success. And, tell us next Monday that you closed the deal.
Pre-Christmas gift.
Ooh. Exactly. No, don't say gift. We're not going to be on the hook for those gift taxes. Come on, we learned that.
a Christmas deal. A Christmas deal.
There you go.
Exactly. Very fair market deal.
Yeah, a very fair market deal with the bankers' help, with a little of Hunt's help, and oh wow, how cool! At least now we have the timeline, we have the goal. Matt Fanslow, lead diagnostician, Riverside Automotive, Red Wing, Minnesota, and Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z podcast on Aftermarket Radio Network, and Hunt Demarest CPA, Part Mellis, specializing in automotive shops, and an accredited business valuation person. God, that's so cool. The Hunt Demarest Business by the Numbers podcast. Guys, thanks so much for your friendship and coming on and doing this. Honor.
Thanks, Carm.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.